Have you ever wondered how big-time tech wizards like Google, IBM, and Apple handle so many apps without breaking a sweat? Well, they've got a secret weapon called Kubernetes. Yep, it's a funny name and I tend to mispronounce it sometimes, but over 70% of the really big companies trust it to keep their tech stuff running smoothly. Google made it, then handed it over to a group called the Cloud Native Computing Foundation in 2015, kind of like giving away a superhero, to make sure it fights the good fight for everyone. Today, we're going on a tech adventure into the world of Kubernetes. It's like the brain behind making sure thousands of apps play nice and don't crash your phone or computer. Stick around till the end of our video and you'll not only get the scoop on how Kubernetes works, but also learn some cool tricks on how to make your tech projects as slick as a city run by robots. Trust me, it's going to be more exciting than watching paint dry. Okay, so imagine Kubernetes, or K8S for short, because who has time for long names, is like the boss of a huge digital orchestra. Every part of this tech tool has a special job, making sure everything works together perfectly, like in a band but for computers. It's super smart and can fit into any tech place. Even big ones like Amazon, where it's in charge of everything from keeping track of warehouse stuff to making sure you can chat with customer service without a hitch. Now, a Kubernetes cluster is kind of like a team of supercomputers, and we call these computers nodes. There are two main types of these nodes. First up, we've got the control plane. Think of it as the conductor of our orchestra, keeping an eye on everything and making sure the music doesn't turn into noise. In the real world, it's so important that it's spread out over several places to avoid any mishaps. Then there are the worker nodes. These are the doers. They run all the apps that make sure things like your online shopping carts and game levels load without a glitch. Apps on these nodes live in something called a pod, which is just a techie term for a group home for apps. Each pod does a specific job, like handling your checkout when you're online shopping. Imagine Amazon during Black Friday. That's when Kubernetes turns into a digital superhero, making sure that every item is tracked and every deal goes through without a hitch, all while the worker nodes are like elves during Christmas, busy packing and tracking your orders and making sure your holiday shopping is as smooth as sliding down a chimney. Now that we've had a peek at the big picture of how Kubernetes is built, let's zoom in on its brain center called the control plane. Think of it as the smartest part of the system where all the big decisions are made. Inside this brain, we have some key players. First, the API server. This is like the head honcho of the control plane. It talks to the rest of the cluster using a special tech language called RESTful API. Basically, it's how all the different parts of Kubernetes chat and make sure they're all on the same page. Next, we have etcd. Imagine a super secure vault where all the important secrets of the cluster are kept. This vault stores everything the cluster needs to remember, no matter what happens. Then there is the scheduler. This is like the school principal who decides which classroom, or node in tech speak, each student or pod goes to based on which rooms have space and which are already full. Lastly but not least, the controller manager. Think of this as a bunch of backstage directors at a play. They make sure that the right number of actors, or replicas of pods, are on stage and that scenes or updates and rollbacks of applications change smoothly without the audience even noticing. Now let's think about how all this tech stuff helps in the real world. Take Disney Plus, where you watch all your favorite shows. Kubernetes is like the unsung hero behind the scenes. With millions tuning in, it's the control plane that keeps the show running smoothly, making sure there's no buffering or interruptions, just like a top-notch backstage crew at a Broadway show. They're the ones who make sure the spotlight hits the star at just the right moment, even though you never see them. Cool, right? Now that we've looked at the big bosses of Kubernetes, it's time to meet the real workers, the worker node components. These are the unsung heroes who do the actual heavy lifting to keep everything running like a well-oiled machine. So, what's going on with these worker nodes? There are a few key players. First, let's meet the Kubele. This little agent lives on each worker node. Think of it like a foreman at a construction site, getting orders from the big boss, the control plane, and making sure that the right parts, or pods, are in the right place at the right time. Next, container runtime. This is the machinery that actually runs the containers. It's like a supercharged engine that starts and stops containers, pulls the needed container images from a cloud library, and makes sure they have the power and resources they need. Lastly, kube proxy, a bit like the traffic cop of the network, routing all the data traffic to the right containers and making sure it's all fair and balanced with no traffic jams. Now imagine a company called Financial Tech, kind of like the superheroes of the finance world. They use Kubernetes to manage their risk management system. In the bustling world of finance, where things change faster than a quick game of dodgeball, staying ahead of risks is super important. The worker nodes in their system are busy running Kubernetes, handling pods that crunch numbers and analyze market data all day. Thanks to Kubernetes, these pods are always where they need to be, ensuring that banks and investors can make smart choices quickly. It's like having a team of super smart math whizzes who can predict the future of money. And now the moment you've all been eagerly waiting for, like the final minutes before recess. It's time to break down the cool stuff and the tough stuff about using Kubernetes to see if it's really the superhero your tech needs. First off, let's chat about scalability and high availability. Imagine you're throwing a party and suddenly twice as many friends show up. Panic? Not with Kubernetes. It's like having an expandable party hall that grows bigger automatically so everyone fits comfortably. It makes sure your computer applications can handle a lot of visitors at once without crashing your party. Next, we have portability across environments. Whether you're playing in your backyard, at the park, or a friend's house, wouldn't it be cool if everything worked the same way? Kubernetes does that for tech stuff. It makes sure your computer programs can run smoothly, whether they're on your own computer, a cloud in the internet sky, or a mix of both. This means fewer oopsies when moving from one place to another. Then, there's efficient resource management. Kubernetes is like a smart robot that knows exactly how much food and space everyone at your party needs. It adjusts everything on the fly, so you save snacks and space, making your mom happy because it costs less and there's less waste. To show you what this looks like in real life, let's talk about Travel Vista and their tech wonder, Kubernetes, that's powered by Kubernetes. So what's this Kubernetes? Well, imagine if you could always buy your favorite ice cream from the store, no matter how many people rush to get it before you. Kubernetes makes sure that when you want to book a vacation, even when everyone else is planning their trips at the same time, their website won't crash or slow down. It's like having a VIP fast pass to the front of the line, every time. The brains behind this magic is their CTO, a kind of tech wizard, and her team of tech elves. They use some clever tricks like automated failover, which basically means if something goes wrong, Kubernetes instantly switches to a backup plan without you ever knowing. And workload replication? That's just a fancy way of saying they make copies of their tools, so many hands are ready to help, making sure everyone gets their holiday booked without a hitch. Thanks to Kubernetes, or really Kubernetes, Travel Vista makes booking trips as easy as pie. No meltdowns, no freakouts, and definitely no sorry, try again later messages. Just you, picking your dream vacation spot with a few clicks and a whole lot of confidence. But wait a minute, before you start thinking Kubernetes is the superhero of the tech world without any weaknesses, let's talk about some of its quirks. First up, it's complex, really complex. Setting up Kubernetes is like trying to build the biggest, twistiest roller coaster ever, without any instructions. Imagine opening a box of Legos to find a million pieces and no guidebook. Yep, it's that tough, and if you don't know what you're doing, you could end up spending tons of time and allowance money just to get started. And then, let's not forget about how much power it needs. Kubernetes is kind of a resource hog. It needs a lot of computer power to do its thing. For a small group or club, using Kubernetes to manage a few apps is like buying a giant gas-guzzling bus just to drive yourself and your best friend to the corner store. It's overkill, right? You end up spending more on gas than on snacks. So while Kubernetes can do some amazing things, like keeping a zillion apps running smoothly, even when everyone and their dog is online, it's not always the best choice. It's like having a fancy espresso machine when all you really want is a cup of plain old Joe. Sure, it's cool to look at and can make all kinds of drinks, but sometimes it's a bit too much for just your morning caffeine fix. To better understand this, let's meet Meditech Innovations. These folks are like the superheroes of doctors' offices because they're all about making sure doctors can use their computers to keep us healthy. They use Kubernetes to handle their electronic medical records platform, which is just a fancy way of saying they keep all the patient info neat and organized on computers. But here's the twist. While Kubernetes is great at making things run smoothly and grow bigger without problems, like helping more doctors and nurses use the system, it's also a bit of a diva. Yep, it needs a lot of attention. The IT team at Meditech, which is like the group of tech wizards behind the scenes, often finds themselves spending a lot of time just making sure Kubernetes is happy and working right. This means they sometimes have less time to think about new ways to make going to the doctor less of a headache. It's kind of like having a really fancy robot that does your homework for you, but it needs you to oil its gears and update its software all the time. Sure, you have more time to play because your homework is done, but you also have to keep making sure the robot doesn't have a meltdown. For Meditech, it's super important to make sure they get the balance right. They want to use the awesome powers of Kubernetes without letting it take over all their time. It's all about making sure the tech helps more than it hinders, so doctors can do their job better without computer troubles getting in the way. So, we've been on a tech adventure today diving into the world of Kubernetes, which is basically the superhero of the tech world that helps big companies and even small startups handle a zillion apps without breaking a sweat. It's got this super cool setup that keeps getting better and a bunch of tech-savvy fans who make sure it stays top-notch. Just when you think you're a Kubernetes whiz, guess what? It keeps changing and getting cooler, like a video game that gets new levels just when you think you've beaten the boss. It's always one step ahead, dreaming up new tricks that we haven't even thought of yet. Stay curious, keep exploring, and hey, if you think there's something we missed or you have your own cool thoughts on Kubernetes, drop us a comment below. We'd love to hear what you think. Unless you're just going to tell us how much you love homework, then maybe keep that to yourself.